Hello. Good morning. Cool. So we've got a couple of new-ish songs, new in the sense that you've heard them, but you just haven't heard me sing them. So it's kind of like they're new. So if you don't mind, you can stand with us. We're all gonna sing together through our masks, if you want. This first one is called No Other Choice. Everybody say yeah, yeah, yeah. In the back say yeah, yeah, yeah. All around say yeah, yeah. So many times in life before, I tried to do things my way. I thought that I was smart enough. I thought I knew enough to handle myself. I didn't realize the problem was the struggle was between my will and yours. choice. I have no other choice but to trust you. That's all I can do. I have no other choice but to believe.
Good morning, everybody. How's it going? Look, you just sat down without me having to say it. You guys are learning. I love it. Man, how great was that song? That was the second time we've played it. The first time Heather led it, and it's actually a song she found, which I think is really cool. She brought it to us, and then the band just like obliterated it. You guys crushed it. Thank you so much. Yeah. If you've been here before, you may notice we got a new band guy in the back. That's Seth. Everybody say hi, Seth. First of all, I told him to get as far away from everybody as possible. That's why he's in the corner. Just kidding. Next week, he's going to be here again, and he's actually going to be playing a harp, which sounds rad, right? I've never seen a harp like in a band situation like this before. So he tells me it will be good and not a disaster. And like, I heard him today, so I believe him. It's going to be great. Okay, so I'm Jarrett. How's it going? This morning, my wife, Tiffany, over here said, hey, are you doing the welcome today? I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, man, every time you do the welcome, I feel like the new people are like, that guy's so weird. Just to prove her point, while the band was kind of jamming there at the end, I wanted to sneak on stage and do like a Peanuts dance. Anyways, okay. Next time. All right, do me a favor. Everybody take your phone out. If you're new, if you're old, I shouldn't say old. If you've been around a while, go to diff.church, and when you do, it'll look like this. Nice. Right at the top, it says, I'm new. If you're new, click it. We'd love to hear from you. We would love some feedback on things you love, things you don't love, things you want to see more of, less of, whatever. Tell us how you found us. Everything is super helpful as we're just kind of trying to build this thing up and keep getting more awesome. Also, if you're not new and you have a message for us, you can click there anyway. I should put a tab under it that says, I'm not new, but I still want to talk to you. That's a good place to just give us feedback. Also, you can give us prayer requests. We'd love to pray with you about anything going on in your life. We've got a couple of events coming up, which I'll tell you about in a second. You can find that at diff.church. And if you love what we're doing, you can donate and make sure that we get to keep doing it. Okay, events. I mentioned it. Mike, go ahead and there you go. We've got 2 events coming up. We've got a beach day on the 18th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then Chris and Ryan Zubrick, who I don't think are here today. Oh, right there, cool. There are in-house magicians. They actually debuted their magic show right here on this stage at the beginning of this year. And it went so well, we decided that you should open a magic theater. And they did about a month ago. It's been amazing so far. So we're going to go as a church. They can hold 70 seats. So everybody should come out. If you click on events, you'll see a link that'll take you to their website to buy tickets. The beach is free. The magic show, you got to pay a fee. Got to keep Dave up here. Okay, last thing for you today. See, Tiffany knows I'm weird. Anyway, Sunday fun day. We like to hang out and have brunch after service. Today we're going to Love Food Central, which is right over that way. I believe it's kind of a vegan place. Yep, cool. So right after church, we're going to break down a few things, and then we're going to head that direction. We would love to see you at Love Food Central. Cool? Happy to see you all today. Let's give it up for Hannah!
Another not awkward transition. Hi, friends. Okay, we have a very cool topic today, which we'll get to in a second, but first I have 2 things to tell you. One is something we are excited about, we're celebrating, and one is something we need help with. We, if you're new around here, have an honesty policy, so we just tell you whatever's going on at Diff Church. Good, bad, medium, doesn't matter. We'll tell you everything. So the first thing is, if any donations that come in, we take 10% of it and we put it back into our community immediately. We kind of save it up for a little while and then we donate to local nonprofits and people that need help. So we made some donations recently. We donated $1,000 to the Pinellas Education Fund and their Stuff the Bus project. So that is to help children in Pinellas County who can't afford school supplies or may not be able to afford the school supplies that they need, and it gives them backpacks and school supplies and all kinds of things. So we are really excited to support that, especially with school starting. And then we also donated $250 to Project Mar, which is a local organization that supports artists. And I don't know where Dave and Heather went, but they own the Mar Theater, which is right there, and we love them, and they've been part of Diff Church for a long time. They were some of the first people who even knew this was going to happen, which is exciting. So we love to support them as well. So yay, that's only possible because you guys made that possible. The second thing is, if you like babies, we need to help in the nursery. So we've had a few longtime volunteers in our nursery. We try to make people not volunteer more than one time a month. We don't want to burn anybody out. A lot of us come from cultures in church where it's like, you are going to show up at church every single Sunday at the crack of dawn and stay there until you die. And we don't want to do that to anyone, but several of our longtime volunteers, because of health issues or because of their work schedules, are not able to volunteer right now in the nursery. So if you like babies, come find me. We could really use your help one Sunday a month. Our nursery is for up to 4 years old right now, and Amber is our head of the nursery. She's in there today. You do have to be background checked. It's a really easy online process, unless, of course, you're a murderer, which I hope you're not. It's literally like an email, and you fill it out, and then it gives me a ping, and it's like, clear. I've never had anyone come back and be like, warning, this person is terrible. One person came back, and it was like, please consider. So I looked into it, and then they had a traffic ticket. And I was like, I don't really think that affects their ability to snuggle babies, but maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Now, I'm so excited this morning. I've had caffeine. I'm trying to calm down a little bit because I feel like I have a lot of energy because we're talking about Genesis, which I have been wanting to do since we started Different Church. We're having a whole series on Genesis, which we don't normally do series. We just normally, I get up here and I talk to you, which is the same thing that I'm doing, except for several weeks, the same topic. Genesis is the first book of the Bible, and I think it's the most controversial, misunderstood, misinterpreted book. The only other book that possibly rivals it is Revelation, and we are going to talk about it, and this is exactly why we exist as a church. We like the hard questions that typically just get ignored or glossed over in a typical church setting. So if you want to dig deeper and do your own study, I'm putting my professor hat on. It's my favorite hat to wear. But if you are you like to dig into that stuff, I have 2 recommendations for you. A lot of what I will be talking about comes from Genesis for Normal People and The Evolution of Adam, which are academic works by Pete Enns and Jared Bias. Okay. Everybody put your seatbelts on. Because Genesis is a wild ride, so keep all hands, arms, legs, and your emotions inside the moving vehicle at all times, even if this makes you feel some kind of way, okay? Most of the most known Bible stories come from Genesis. We have stories about how the world came to exist. We have, obviously, Joseph in his Technicolor Dreamcoat. We have Noah, crazy Noah, and his football-sized ark. We have Adam and Eve and the snake, which any first-year overzealous seminary student will call a serpent, as if that matters. Genesis is complicated and all over the place, and there's a reason it's one of the most controversial books in the Bible. So what do we do? Where do we even begin? Because the content is so foreign to most of us that sometimes we just give up before we even start, or we just read the stories with this vague sense of horror and general confusion. So this is where we're going to start. Genesis is an ancient story. And you might be like, yeah, obviously. You're allowed to roll your eyes, it's fine. But this is the most important thing to remember about Genesis before we even start. Remembering that Genesis is an ancient story will show us how to approach its words and what we should expect from them. Depending on your past exposure to the Bible, you may approach Genesis expecting to find a detailed account of history and science, like it's a textbook. I'm calling it a story. Now, just because I call it a story, that doesn't necessarily say anything about its validity, right? Any book about the Cold War is as much a story as Moby Dick. But Genesis is not a textbook. It's not a history book. It's not a science book. It's also not a book of principles meant to teach us something about our life. Some of these stories in Genesis are downright horrifying. And if you were to take those as guides for how to live your life, that might produce some disastrous results. But also, you can't approach Genesis asking this question every 5 minutes. What does it mean for me? Imagine if you were watching Star Wars, and then you just paused it every 5 minutes, and you were like, but what does this mean for me? That's not the point. Stories, epic stories, they do apply to our lives, right? But not in these abstract principles that we can be like, well, the story of creation means this, and it applies to my life in this way, and therefore, no. We have to read Genesis for what it is, which is an ancient story written to specific people at a specific time in their history. So ancient, that's number one. Number two is Genesis is not a standalone book. We read it like a standalone book, but it's actually one in a 5-part series. Imagine if someone was going on and on about how much they loved some kind of epic TV show like Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones, and then you'd ask them questions, and they were like, oh yeah, I've only seen the first 4 episodes. Well, they don't know what the whole story is, right? The story only makes sense if you see it in light of the middle and the end. I'm guilty of only watching a few episodes of each of those shows. Not my bag. I'm kind of a nerd, but when they killed my favorite character at the end of the first season of Game of Thrones, I was like, oh, well, I'm not down for that. I don't need to have my emotions toyed with every season. So, peace out. I'll keep watching Kitchen Nightmares. If you want to think about Genesis, we're going to remember that it's one in a 5-part series. So the series is called the Pentateuch. That is a Greek word meaning the 5 scrolls. Once upon a time, all books came in rolls. They were handwritten, and there's literally no way you could find your place if you left off in the middle. Just had to start at the beginning again, or unroll a sheet of paper as long as this room, possibly longer. It contains the first 5 books of the Bible, so Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The Pentateuch is old. Old, like super old, okay? The Israelites called the Pentateuch the Torah, which comes from the Hebrew word meaning law or instruction. And just like any good movie, the title is giving us a hint as to what it's about. It's not called the Torah or law because there's a lot of tedious thou shalt and thou shalt nots. There are a lot of them. Some of them are normal, some of them are super weird. And if you read them, you're just going to have to take them in stride or skip them, like you've been doing. These 5 books are called the Torah because the climactic moment of the entire series is when the Israelites are camped out at Mount Sinai and Moses goes up to meet God, and God gives the law, the instructions to Moses. This takes up more than half of the 5 books. It's the central theme of the whole story, is these instructions that God gives. They find out who they are as God's people and how to maintain a life-giving relationship with God in the promised land. The central message of the entire 5 books is that Yahweh and nobody else is to be worshipped. Worshiping other gods in the ancient world is like as easy as picking a restaurant is today. We'd be like, oh, which god do I feel like today? Every house, every city, every nation, they had their own list of like, here's our recommended gods. Are you feeling you have a pain in your knee? Here's 7 gods you can pray to. So easy to pick other gods to worship. And the whole point of these 5 books is you get one God to be loyal to, and that's Yahweh. Why? For 2 reasons. Because God is the creator of the world and the savior of Israel. These 2 themes come up over and over and over. So Genesis sets the stage for the whole 5 books by focusing on number 1, God is the creator, and hinting at number 2. And the other 4 books focus on number 2, God is the savior of Israel. The third thing we have to remember about Genesis is, again, that it's ancient. It's easier to understand what you're reading if you know when it was written and to whom, right? So here's an example. Did anyone have to read in school George Orwell's Animal Farm? Y'all lying. I know more of you had to read it than 3 people. How about Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451? Okay. Knowing when these stories were written helps us better understand what they are. So Animal Farm might be just a weird, disturbing story about power-hungry animals. Fahrenheit 451 might be just a disturbing story about burning books, if we don't know when they were written and why. So Animal Farm is a critique of Stalin's oppressive communist regime, and it was written in 1945. Fahrenheit 451 is a critique of the communist witch hunt put on by Joseph McCarthy, and it was written in 1953. These stories have much deeper meaning than just weird animals taking over a farm. And if we don't catch that, we miss the whole point of the book, right? We're just reading a couple of stories that are kind of weird. We're missing the actually much more serious and troubling intention behind the stories. And the same thing is true of Genesis. Just because Genesis is in the Bible does not mean we can read it any old way we please. And it definitely doesn't mean that it was written for us. Like someone was writing down Genesis like, wow, in several thousand years, there's going to be a bunch of people living in America, and they're going to be like, was creation really 6 literal days? We should write this so that they don't have any questions. No, it was written a long, long time ago in a place so different from this that it might as well be a galaxy far, far away, and it was written in a language that is dead. Modern-day Israelis speak a completely different type of Hebrew. So the words that were used don't exist. The place that was written about, I mean, it exists, but not really anymore. It's completely different. So then we're like, okay, well, how old is Genesis? Like, if we can just pinpoint this, it will help us. Well, here we run into a problem. As with almost every piece of ancient literature, it's an anonymous book. This offends our sensibilities with our ISBN numbers and our title pages. There's no title page. There is no author's name. There's no publication date. There's no dedication at the beginning where the author's like, I just want to thank my kids for putting up with me while I slaved away long hours writing this epic tale. No, nothing. Prevailing wisdom is like, Moses wrote the Pentateuch, the Torah, because he's the main character. That's a bit ridiculous, okay? First of all, it records Moses' death. It says Moses died and he was buried, and to this day, no one knows where he was buried. Would be an odd thing for someone to write about themselves. It also says Moses is the most humble person on the earth, which would be a ridiculous thing for a humble person to write about themselves. But other than those two things, right, the whole thing reads like something has happened a long time ago. It's written in third person. It's talked about with this view. And as we get into it over the next couple weeks, there's all these things that didn't exist at the time the stories happened. So the stories are set a long time ago, and they have these themes in them that didn't exist until hundreds and hundreds of years later. Historical biblical scholars tend to agree that the first 5 books of the Bible, as we know them, didn't come together until sometime after 538 BCE. It's about 2,500 years ago. The problem with that is that's approximately 700 to 1,000 years after Moses would have lived, which does kind of defeat the purpose of saying he wrote it. He lived for 1,000 years and then he wrote his story. And we're so blessed today to be able to read it. 539 BCE was a big deal for the Israelites. That's when the Persian king Cyrus defeated the Babylonians, thus releasing all these Israelites who had been forcibly deported. They were living in another place, and they finally got to go home after spending 57 years in Babylon. This is not to say that the entire 5 books, including Genesis, were written from scratch in 539 BCE. There were certainly some older traditions, like oral traditions. There were a few things written down, but it was only after the Israelites returned back to their homeland that these old writings and traditions were compiled and edited in the way we have them right now. So these writings should be viewed more as a remix that takes samples of other works and puts them together to make a fresh, cohesive story. And even more specifically, this is for Genesis, because a lot of scholars feel that Israel's story as a nation began to be kind of kept and written down around the time of King David, which was several hundred years before Babylon took over. Still at least 500 years after Moses lived. And they looked around and they were like, well, we have a king, we have a nation. Somebody should be keeping track of some stuff. We should have some records, right? Where the kings have records, they have to. How are you going to figure out who's paying taxes if we don't have records? So they started to write a few things down. And then their story goes into hyperspeed in 586 BC because Babylon comes in, they destroy the city, they tear down the walls, they burn down the temple, and they forcibly deport most of the Israelites. And they looked around and they were like, man, everything sucks. No king, no land, no temple. What even are we as a country without this? Where was Yahweh? Does God even care? Are we still God's people? The Old Testament, and this is something to kind of remember whenever you're reading it, the whole thing was created in light of a national trauma, which was the forcible deportation of the majority of the population. And it was written specifically to encourage faithfulness to God. The Torah tells us how the Israelites got their start and how God stuck by them. And it tells us how they got into this mess because they weren't faithful to a God who was faithful to them. It's basically Israel's constitution, these first 5 books. It's quite a long constitution. I mean, our constitution is long, but not that long. It says, this is who we are, this is what we believe, and this is what our God is like. So let's take like a 30,000-foot view of Genesis. Genesis is 50 chapters long. It takes us all the way from the creation of the universe to Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat. Now, remember, chapters did not exist when Genesis was written. Neither did verse numbers. Books came on rolls. Monks added chapter and verse designations like way, way, way later, and bliss. But it wasn't written that way. So instead of chapters, like how can you keep your place? How do you know when Genesis is moving from section to section? There are 10 sections in Genesis, and they all start with some variation of, this is the line of, this is the account of, these are the descendants of. 6 of these sections are found in chapters 1 through 11. 4 of them are in chapters 12 through 50. I'm going to tell you the 10 sections. You don't have to remember them. I'm just telling you because I find them interesting because I'm a nerd. So Genesis 2:4, the heavens and the earth. Everyone's pretty familiar with that one. Then we have Genesis 5:1, the line of Adam and Eve, all their kids. Then we have 6:9, the line of Noah, weird ark guy. We will talk later about how weird he was. Genesis 10, the line of Noah's sons. Genesis 11, the line of Shem, one specific son of Noah. Genesis 11:27, the line of Terah, who is Father Abraham's father. Genesis 25, the line of Ishmael, which is Abraham's son by the slave woman Hagar. And then we have Genesis 25:19, the line of Isaac, which is his son by his wife Sarah. And then we have Esau, which is Isaac's oldest son. So we have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then Joseph at the end. Genesis 36, the line of Esau, that's Isaac's oldest kid. And Genesis 37, the line of Jacob, Isaac's younger son. So it's the beginning of Israel's story, and it moves us all the way from Adam to Jacob and his 12 sons, who will become the patriarchs of the 12 tribes of Israel. So it's telling a story from the Genesis, from the beginning, to how did Israel come to be? Where are our ancestors? Who are they? Where are they from? The first 11 chapters of Genesis tells the story of the creation of the cosmos, Adam and Eve, their 2 kids, Cain and Abel, and of course, there's immediately a murder in the Bible, of course. Noah's Ark, the Tower of Babel, and it wouldn't be the Old Testament without a slightly tedious list of genealogies and nations, typically that we sleep through. I don't know, I guess if you're an ancient Persian, you're like, wow, these genealogies, that's what I wake up for in the morning. A long line of ancestors written down. We skip those, but it was very meaningful to people. It's the opening sequence, these first 11 chapters. It's like coming out of the gate strong, meant to grab our attention and keep our attention so that we stick around for chapters 12 through 50, where there's a story of one guy, Abraham, turning into an entire people group, Israel. And Abraham gets called by God and promised 2 things: people and land. People and land, people and land, people and land. That's the last thing you need to remember about Genesis. Genesis is all about Israel as the recipient of God's promise of people and land. You might be shocked if you read Genesis how often the themes of land and people show up, and the struggle between Israel and God over the land and people. You guys can come back up. There's a struggle at every point in this story. Creation seems to be a struggle. Adam and Eve, struggle. Cain and Abel, murder. It's quite a big struggle. Noah, Abraham, his kids, siblings especially seem to struggle a lot. Like Jacob actually literally wrestles with God. And his name is changed from Jacob to Israel, which means to struggle. So the name of the nation of Israel means to struggle. The whole theme of these first 5 books, and Genesis specifically, is the struggle of a people group and God, which is exactly what we might expect from a story written by exiled Israelites who are struggling with their current conditions and their identity, and if God remembers them, and if God even cares about them. Because Genesis is a story about Israel. It's not a story, it's not a science textbook about how the world came into existence. It's a story of people who are trying to connect their current, which is terrible, with their ancient past. They weren't interested in reading about Noah and the flood because it's a great story with excellent principles to live by. I don't know, it's a great story. I don't think it has great principles. Be like, oh, if things aren't going your way, the answer is murder the world. Thanks, God. I'll just take that and I'll just keep that for the next time that I want to go nuclear on someone. The answer is I can be just like God and murder everyone. No. Nor were they trying to find out what really happened. They weren't asking these modern historical questions. They were trying to understand their own relationship with God. And this is the story of Genesis. It's violent. It's really violent. It's crazy. It's completely unbelievable. It's a bit choppy. It doesn't have the best flow. Somebody didn't do so good with editing. At times, it's just unbelievable, and yet profoundly believable. And if you're like feeling kind of like overwhelmed by all this information, just take a breath, okay? You have questions, definitely come talk to me, but I want you to think about this idea that Genesis was not written for us. It was written to a people who were struggling, a people who had been through so much trauma, and were trying to reclaim their identity as a people group and as a faith community. And next week, we're gonna start at the beginning, in the beginning, I should say. We're gonna talk about creation. And we can ask the question, right? Did it happen the way it was written? Or maybe is that even the wrong question to be asking of the text? Is there better questions that will help us understand? So if you think about Genesis, let's try just for a few weeks, and I know this may be really difficult, if you've grown up in a faith community that is like, this is our charter. This is what we believe. I know if you say Jesus is Lord, you're saved, but also if you don't believe in the 6 literal days of creation and that there was a boat big enough to hold tons and tons of animals, never mind how it smells. If you don't believe exactly these things, then you are not a faith person. If that's your experience, it's okay. You shake it out. I want you to think. I'm going to be presenting you with maybe some readings that you haven't heard of. Maybe some things that won't necessarily agree with what you've been taught or what you've grown up with. What I'm going to present to you is readings that historical biblical scholars have arrived upon, and they still have faith. And they still have a connection to God, and it's not a struggle. We have to remember that Israel's story means to struggle. And so it's going to be a lot of struggling. And maybe we'll be struggling. But God will meet us there too. We have 2 more songs, so I invite you to stand with us, and then I'll come back and give you a benediction after that. And then we'll have a most excellent Sunday.
So this song is called a couple of things, but Jared gave it a hybrid. I give myself a beautiful name. It's a combination of I give myself away and what a beautiful name. Give step away so you can use me. Here I stand, Lord, my life is in your hands. Lord, I'm to see your we have one more song, and the last time this song was performed, Michaela, who played cajon and sang, was here. So we're gonna bring it back and give it slightly additional meaning. So, yeah. Your eyes are on the lonely, though others look away. Your feet run to the broken, your hands are quick to save. Make us like you, Lord. You walk with the forgotten and offer them a home. Adopting the unwanted and calling them your own. Make us like you, Lord. Oh, give us your heart. Oh, give us your heart. Let the light of heaven shine as we step into the dark. Oh, give us your heart. Oh, give us your heart. Out to see
smells good. I was jamming behind the curtain. You couldn't see me. I was like, yes. But I'm a little Pentecostal, so, I like to get down. A couple of things. One is over there in this corner by the door, we have our stuff center because there's stuff there. Stickers are free, so totally grab one. If you would like one, there's some other stuff over there. Check it out. We have, of course, brunch today, Sunday Fun Day at Love Food Central. We have to tear down everything here, and then we'll eat some delicious vegan food. If you don't like vegan food, like tomatoes are vegan. So is lettuce and like apples. It's not weird, okay? Also, I would love to meet you. Some of you run away very quickly, which I totally respect that journey for you. But if you want to talk to me, I would love to talk to you. And also, we could totally get together for coffee if you want sometime during the week. The only quirk with me is my baby's with me all the time. So there's some exciting 8-month-old drama sometimes. We'll talk about Jesus, hear some baby squeals. It's the best. Thanks for laughing, Heather. Heather thinks I'm funny. Okay, we have a benediction. It's a cross between a blessing and a prayer. We like to do one every Sunday, and then we go on our way. So let's pray. All that was, all that is, all that will ever be, dwells in the life of God. We are inseparable from generations past and generations future. The lives of the ones who came before us are present all around us. The needs of those to come call on us today. What are we doing with all we have inherited, the wonderful and the terrible? What will we leave behind? May God's blessing be on us as we strive to live faithfully in the days we've been given. Blessed are the ones who are nourished by the gifts of heaven, those who dwell in the land of truth, reach for the ways of justice, and seek joy. Let us go and seek transformation and grace. Amen. Have a great Sunday, and also happy September.